I didn't plan on becoming the guy people went to for help. It just happened. Maybe it was because I was patient. Maybe because I didn't mind explaining things twice. Or maybe it was because I didn't have much else going on. So saying yes felt easier than sitting alone in my apartment overthinking my life. That's how I ended up tutoring Leo. We met in our second year, same economics class. He was the kind of guy you noticed without trying, confident, loud in a way that didn't feel annoying, always surrounded by people. The type who could walk into a room late and still somehow control the energy. I was the opposite. I showed up early, sat near the front, took notes like my life depended on it. So when he turned around one day after class and said, "Hey, you're Cooper, right? You actually understand this stuff?" I honestly thought he was joking. Yeah, I said, caught off guard. He grinned. Good. Because I don't. That was it. No awkward build-up. No pretending. Just direct. And somehow, a week later, I was sitting across from him in the library, explaining supply curves while he watched me like I was doing something way more interesting than I actually was. "You make this sound easy," he said. "It is easy," I replied. "You just don't pay attention in class." He laughed. "I pay attention. Just not to the professor." I shook my head, trying not to smile. That's the problem. But the thing was, he did try. Not immediately. The first couple of sessions, he was distracted checking his phone, joking around, leaning back in his chair like this was optional. Then something shifted. Maybe it was the midterm coming up. Maybe it was the fact that I didn't let him slack off. Or maybe it was something else. Because after a while, he started showing up early. Started asking real questions. Started looking at me like what I was saying actually mattered. "You're different when you explain things," he told me one evening. I frowned. "What does that mean?" "I don't know," he said, studying me. "You're calmer. Like focused. It's nice." I didn't know what to do with that. So I just said, "Well, that's kind of the point of studying." He smiled, but didn't look away. And that was the first moment I felt it. Not something obvious. Not some dramatic realization. Just awareness. Of how close he was sitting. Of the way his voice softened when it was just the two of us. Of how different he felt when he wasn't surrounded by other people. We kept studying anyway. Because that's what this was, right? Just studying. At least, that's what I told myself. A few weeks in, studying with Leo became part of my routine. Same table in the library. Same time in the evening. Same quiet rhythm of me explaining things and him pretending not to get them until I explained them again. "You're doing that on purpose," I said one night. "Doing what?" Acting confused, so I'll keep talking. He smirked. "Is it working?" I paused. "Maybe." He leaned back in his chair, satisfied. "Then I'm not changing anything." I rolled my eyes, but I couldn't ignore the way something in my chest shifted when he looked at me like that. It was subtle, but it was there, and it was getting harder to ignore. The first time things felt off, we weren't even studying. We'd finished early for once. He actually understood everything, which he wouldn't stop bragging about, and instead of leaving, he just stayed there. "Don't you have somewhere to be?" I asked, closing my notebook. "Probably," he said, "but I'm not in a rush." That wasn't new. What was new was the silence that followed. Usually, Leo filled silence. Jokes, comments, random stories. He hated empty space. But now he just watched me. "You're staring," I said. "Am I?" "Yes." He didn't look away. Something about that made my stomach tighten. "Why?" I asked. He shrugged, but it wasn't casual. Just thinking. About. Another pause. Then, quieter. "You." That should have been nothing. People say things like that all the time. As a joke. As filler. But this didn't feel like that. "About what exactly?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He leaned forward slightly, resting his arms on the table. "I don't know," he admitted. "Just, you're not what I expected." I let out a small breath. I don't know if that's a compliment. "It is," he said immediately. Too quickly. Too certain. And suddenly, the air between us felt different. Thicker. "Okay," I said, breaking eye contact, packing my things. "That's good, I guess." He didn't move. "Cooper," he said. I froze for a second before looking back at him. "Yeah." He hesitated. That was new too. "I'm glad I asked you for help," he said finally. It sounded simple, but it didn't feel simple. "Yeah," I replied. "Me too." And for some reason, that felt like crossing a line I didn't fully understand yet. After that, things didn't go back to normal. Not completely. He still joked. Still complained about assignments. Still acted like himself around other people. But when it was just us, there was something else there. Something quieter. more intentional. He started texting me outside of study sessions. Nothing obvious at first. Did you understand what he said today? I think I messed up question 3. You free later? But then it shifted. You eat yet? You always this quiet in class or just ignoring me? You ever take a break or is studying your whole personality? I found myself smiling at my phone more than I wanted to admit, replying faster than I should, thinking about him when I wasn't supposed to. And that's when I knew this was becoming something. The problem was, I didn't know what. One night, he asked if we could study at his place instead. Library's getting boring, he said. Plus I have better snacks. Snacks aren't a good reason to change locations. I replied. They are if they're good enough. I hesitated. That should have been a simple decision. But it didn't feel simple. Still, I said yes. Because at that point, I was already in deeper than I wanted to admit. His apartment was exactly what I expected. Messy, but not in a bad way. Lived in. Comfortable. Music playing quietly in the background, something I didn't recognize. Make yourself at home, he said, tossing his keys on the counter. I stood there awkwardly for a second before setting my bag down. This is where you avoid studying, I said. This is where I try to study, he corrected. Big difference. I huffed a quiet laugh. We sat down at his table, opened our notebooks, and for a while, it was normal. Almost. But there was something about being in his space that made everything feel closer. More real. Less like something contained to a library table. At one point, I looked up and caught him already looking at me. Not unusual. Except this time, he didn't pretend it wasn't happening. You do that a lot, I said. What? Watch me. He tilted his head slightly. Does it bother you? I hesitated. I don't know. That was the truth. Because it should have. But it didn't. Not in the way it was supposed to. He nodded slowly, like he was processing that. Then he said, almost to himself, good. And something about that word stayed with me longer than it should have. That night, I left later than usual. We hadn't even finished everything we planned to study. We just got distracted. Talking, laughing, sitting in a kind of silence that didn't feel empty anymore. When I finally stood by the door, ready to leave, he walked me there. Same time tomorrow? He asked. I nodded. Yeah. But neither of us moved right away. There was a moment. A pause. Like something was about to happen. But didn't. Good night, Cooper, he said. Good night. I stepped out into the hallway, my heart beating faster than it should have. And for the first time, I let myself think it. This wasn't just studying anymore. And I had a feeling. Leo knew it too. After that night at Leo's apartment, things didn't go back to normal. Not even close. At first, I tried to pretend they did. Same routine, same structure, same, we're just studying mindset. But once something shifts like that, you can't unfeel it. You can't unknow it. And Leo? He definitely wasn't trying to ignore it. The next evening, I showed up at his place again. This time, he opened the door almost immediately like he'd been waiting right on the other side. Hey, he said, a little too casually. Hey. That same pause happened again. Short, but noticeable. Like we were both aware of something we weren't saying. I stepped inside. Ready to actually study today? I asked, setting my bag down. He smirked. Wow. Starting strong. I'm serious. I know, he said softer now. That tone again. It was subtle, but I was starting to recognize it the way his voice shifted when it was just us. Less performative. More real. We sat down, opened our notes, and for about 20 minutes, things were fine. Focused. Productive. Normal. Then he stopped. Just stopped. You're doing it again, I said without looking up. Doing what? Not paying attention. I am paying attention. No, you're staring. Silence. I sighed, finally looking up, and there he was. Watching me. Completely unapologetic. Leo. What? He said, like it was nothing. You're not even trying to hide it. Should I? That caught me off guard. I mean, yeah? A little. He leaned back in his chair, studying me like I was the one being confusing. Why? I opened my mouth. Closed it. Because I didn't actually have a good answer. It's distracting, I said finally. For you or for me? For me, I admitted. That seemed to interest him. How? He asked. I hesitated. Because I knew exactly how. I just didn't want to say it out loud. You're overthinking it, I muttered, looking back down at my notes. I don't think I am, he said quietly. And something about that made my chest tighten. We didn't get much done after that. Not because we couldn't. Because neither of us was really trying anymore. At some point, I closed my notebook. Okay, I said. Break. Finally. He replied, like he'd been waiting for that. I leaned back, stretching slightly. You're impossible to teach, you know that? And yet, I keep passing, he said with a grin. Barely. Still counts. I shook my head, but I was smiling. And that's when it hit me. This felt easy. Too easy. Like we'd slipped into something without either of us officially acknowledging it. Can I ask you something? He said suddenly. I glanced at him. You usually do anyway. He smiled faintly, then grew more serious. Why do you help me? That wasn't what I expected. Because you asked? I said. No. He replied, shaking his head. That's not it. I frowned. Then what is it? He leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees. You could have said no, he said. You don't say no to a lot of people, but you could have to me. I held his gaze for a second. Maybe I didn't want to, I said. Why? There it was again. That directness. That way of asking questions like he actually wanted the truth. I don't know, I admitted. That was the honest answer. Because at the beginning, it had been simple. Now, not so much. He nodded slowly, like he was piecing something together. Yeah, he said. That makes sense. It does. I asked. More than if you gave me some fake answer. I let out a quiet breath. Glad I passed your test. You always do, he said. And the way he said it. It didn't feel like he was talking about studying anymore. The room got quiet after that. Not awkward. Just heavy. Like everything we weren't saying was sitting right there between us. I stood up first. I should go, I said. Already. It's late. He glanced at the clock, then back at me. Yeah, I guess it is. But he didn't sound convinced. Neither was I. Still, I grabbed my bag and walked toward the door. He followed. Of course he did. We stopped in the same place as the night before. Right by the door. Too close. Not touching, but aware. You're leaving early, he said. I'm leaving at a normal time. Not for us. That word again. Us. I swallowed. We're not, I started. But I didn't finish. Because I didn't know how to define what we were. And I had a feeling he knew that. Not what? He asked quietly. I shook my head. Nothing. He watched me carefully. Then, softer. You keep doing that. Doing what? Stopping yourself. I let out a breath. Maybe because I don't know what I'm supposed to say. Then don't say what you're supposed to, he said. Just say what you want. That would have been easier. If I knew what I wanted. There was a long pause. Neither of us moving. Neither of us breaking it. And then, Cooper, he said. My name sounded different in his voice again. Lower. More certain. I looked at him. Yeah. He hesitated. For the first time since I'd known him, he actually hesitated. I think I'm messing this up, he said. That surprised me. How? I don't know what I'm doing, he admitted. But I know this isn't just studying anymore. My heart started beating faster. Yeah, I said quietly. I know. Another pause. Then, do you want it to be? He asked. That question hit harder than anything else he'd said, because it forced me to face it. Not what he was doing, what I wanted. And the truth was, I didn't know how to answer that without changing everything. I started, then stopped, just like he said I always did. He noticed. Of course he did. It's okay if you don't know, he said softly. I don't, I admitted. He nodded. Me neither. That should have made things easier. But somehow, it made them feel even more real. We stood there for another second. Then I reached for the door. I'll see you tomorrow, I said. Yeah, he replied. But neither of us sounded certain. I stepped out into the hallway again. Same as before. But this time, it felt different. He didn't say goodnight right away. I turned back slightly. He was still standing there, watching me. And then he said it. Quiet. Almost like he wasn't sure he should. Cooper, I'm not just asking for help anymore. That stopped me. Completely. I looked at him. And in that moment, I understood exactly what he meant. I didn't answer. Because I didn't know how to. Because anything I said would make it real. And maybe it already was. I walked away anyway. But this time, I wasn't thinking about exams. Or studying. Or helping him pass. I was thinking about one thing. Leo didn't need a tutor anymore. And whatever he wanted now was something else entirely. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because something had happened. Because something almost had. And somehow, that felt worse. The next day, I told myself I needed space. Not in a dramatic way. Just a reset. A chance to get my head straight before things got even more confusing. So when Leo texted me that afternoon, "You coming over today?" I stared at it longer than I should have. Then I typed, "Busy today. Tomorrow." He replied almost instantly, "Since when are you busy?" I huffed a quiet breath. "Since now." There was a pause. Then, "Right." Just one word. But I could feel it. He knew something had shifted. The truth was, I wasn't actually busy. I just didn't trust myself around him right now. Because the more I thought about what he said, I'm not just asking for help anymore. The more I realized, I wasn't just helping anymore either. I spent the evening trying to focus on anything else. Assignments, music, even cleaning my apartment just to keep my hands busy. Didn't work. Everything kept circling back to him. The way he looked at me, the way he said my name, the way he waited for my answer. And the worst part? A part of me wanted to go back. The next day, I couldn't avoid it anymore. Same time, same place, his apartment. But this time, it felt like I was walking into something completely different. He opened the door slower than usual, like he wasn't sure what to expect. Hey, he said. Hey. No smile at first. No jokes. Just that same tension hanging between us. I stepped inside. You actually busy yesterday? He asked. Straight to it. Of course. Yeah, I lied. He looked at me for a second longer than necessary, then nodded. Okay. He didn't push, which somehow made it worse. We sat down to study, opened our notes, tried to pretend like nothing had happened. It lasted maybe 10 minutes. You're doing it again, he said. I didn't look up. Doing what? Thinking too much instead of talking. I exhaled slowly. I just want to focus today. On what? He asked. Studying. Or avoiding? That hit. I closed my notebook. Leo. What? He said, but softer this time. You're not making this easier. I'm not trying to make it easier, he replied. I'm trying to make it honest. Silence. That word landed heavy. Honest. I finally looked at him. What do you want me to say? I want you to stop pretending this is still the same, he said. It was the same, I replied. Yeah, he nodded. Before. We both knew what that meant. I leaned back in my chair, running a hand through my hair. This is exactly why I didn't come yesterday. Because of me, he asked. Because of this, I said, gesturing between us. He didn't look away. Then tell me what this is. I let out a short, breathless laugh. You really don't make anything simple, do you? No, he said. And neither do you. The room felt smaller again, like it was closing in around the conversation we'd been avoiding. I don't know what this is, I admitted. Okay, he said. That's a start. But I know it's not just studying anymore. He nodded. Yeah, I know. Another pause. Then, quieter. So what does that mean for you? That question stayed there. Waiting. Heavy. Real. I swallowed. It means, I'm not used to this. To what? He asked. To someone looking at me like you do, I said. That was the truth. And saying it out loud made my chest tighten. Leo didn't react right away. He just watched me. Carefully. Like what? He asked. I hesitated. Then said it anyway. Like I'm not just convenient. Something in his expression shifted. Not dramatic. Just deeper. I don't look at you like that, he said quietly. I know, I replied. And that's the problem? No, I said quickly. That's what makes it complicated. He leaned forward slightly. Cooper, I'm not trying to mess this up. I know. He stopped, then shook his head. I don't want to act like I don't feel it. That word again. Feel. I felt it too. That was the problem. Leo, I said, quieter now. What if this changes everything? He held my gaze. What if it already has? That shut me up. Because he was right. It already had. The silence stretched. But this time, it didn't feel avoidable. It felt like something was building. Something inevitable. I didn't expect this, I admitted. Me neither. I thought I was just helping you pass. He let out a small smile. I think I passed already. I huffed a quiet laugh. Yeah, you did. And I still asked you to come back, he added. That wasn't about studying. Not anymore. I stood up suddenly. Not because I wanted to leave. Because I needed to breathe. This is a lot, I said. I know. He stood up too. Not too close. But closer than before. You don't have to figure it out right now, he said. Then why does it feel like I do? Because you don't like not being in control. I gave him a look. Okay, that's accurate. He smiled slightly. Then it faded. And he said more seriously, I just need to know one thing. I tensed. What? He looked straight at me. Do you feel something too? There it was. No avoiding it now. No hiding behind studying. No pretending. Just the truth. I could have lied. Said no. Walked away. Kept things simple. Safe. Unchanged. But I didn't. Because looking at him, I couldn't. Yeah, I said quietly. I do. Something in the room shifted instantly. Not louder. Not bigger. Just clearer. Like everything finally had a name. Leo exhaled slowly. Like he'd been holding that in for a while. Okay, he said. That was it. Just okay. But it meant everything. We stood there. Close. Not touching, but no longer pretending. I don't know what to do with that yet, I admitted. You don't have to, he said. Then what do we do? He thought for a second, then said, we don't run from it. That sounded simple. It wasn't. But somehow, it felt right. And for the first time since this all started, I wasn't just nervous. I was curious. Because I wasn't just helping Leo anymore. And he wasn't just asking for help. We were stepping into something neither of us planned. And neither of us fully understood. But this time, I didn't walk away. After I said it, after I admitted I felt something too, there was no going back. Not to how things were before. Not to pretending this was just about studying. Not to acting like Leo was just another guy in my life. The strange thing was, nothing dramatic happened right away. No big moment. No sudden shift. We just stayed there, standing across from each other in his apartment, both aware that something had finally been said out loud. And neither of us knew what came next. So, I said, exhaling slightly. Now what? Leo ran a hand through his hair, pacing once before stopping in front of me again. I don't know, he admitted. But I don't want to mess it up by rushing into something we don't understand yet. I nodded. Yeah, same. That surprised me a little, because part of me did want to rush it, to close the distance, to stop thinking and just feel. But I knew he was right. If we moved too fast, we'd probably break whatever this was before it even had a chance. Can we just not make it weird? He asked. I raised an eyebrow. It's already weird. He smiled faintly. Okay, more weird. I thought about that, then nodded. Yeah, we can try. We sat back down after that, opened our notebooks again, but it felt different now. Not tense, just aware. Every glance lasted a little longer. Every silence meant a little more. At one point, I caught him looking at me again. You're doing it, I said. Yeah, he replied. At least he wasn't pretending anymore. Still distracting, I muttered. Still not stopping. I shook my head, but there was no real annoyance behind it. Cooper, he said after a while. Yeah. Come here. I froze slightly. Why? He hesitated, like he was choosing his words carefully. He stopped, then tried again. You're far. That was such a simple sentence. But it didn't feel simple. I stood up slowly, walked around the table, stopped a few steps away from him. This close enough? I asked. He shook his head once. No. That was when my heartbeat picked up again. Because now it wasn't just words anymore. Now it was distance, space, choice. I took another step. Now we were close. Closer than we'd ever been before, without some kind of excuse. He didn't move. Didn't joke. Didn't break it. Okay, I said quietly. Now what? Leo looked at me like he was trying to memorize something. I don't know, he admitted again. Then, softer. I just wanted to see if you'd come. That hit harder than it should have. Because I did come. Without arguing. Without making it a joke. Without pretending I didn't understand what he meant. You're really confusing, I said under my breath. You still came, he replied. Yeah, I said. I did. There was a pause. A long one. And then, he smiled slightly. Not teasing. Just real. I think that means something, he said. I swallowed. It does. Neither of us moved. Not forward. Not back. Just standing there in that space where something could happen, but didn't. And weirdly, that felt important. Like we were both choosing not to rush past this moment. Okay, I said finally, stepping back just a little. We should probably actually study before we both fail everything. He laughed softly. Yeah, probably. But neither of us went back to normal. Because there was no normal anymore. The next few days felt like walking a line. Not fragile, just careful. We still met up. Still studied. Still talked. But now there was intention behind everything. Leo texted me more. Not just random stuff. More personal. You always overthink like this. You're quieter today. I like when you laugh more. That last one stayed with me longer than it should have. And I noticed things too. The way he'd shift closer without thinking. The way he'd lower his voice when it was just us. The way he'd look at me like he was waiting for something but not pushing for it. We were building something. Slowly. Without saying it directly. Until one night, it got harder to ignore. We were back at his place again. Late. Too late for it to just be about studying. You're not even pretending anymore, I said, closing my notebook. Neither are you, he replied. Fair. I leaned back, watching him. You're different lately. How? Quieter, I said, but not in a bad way. He nodded slightly. I think I'm just thinking more. About. He looked at me. You. There it was again. That word. Clear. Direct. Unavoidable. I let out a slow breath. Yeah, I said. Same. That changed the air instantly. Again. But this time, it felt heavier. Leo stood up. Not suddenly. Just like he'd made a decision. Cooper, he said. I looked up at him. Yeah. He hesitated. But not like before. This time, it felt like he already knew what he wanted to say. I don't think I want to keep pretending this is nothing. My chest tightened. Yeah, I said quietly. I don't either. He took a step closer. Slow enough that I could have stepped back if I wanted to. I didn't. Tell me if I'm moving too fast, he said. I will. Another step. Now we were close again. Closer than before. But this time, neither of us stepped back. I don't want to mess this up, he said. You won't, I replied. I didn't know why I was so sure. But I was. There was a pause. A long one. And then, he leaned in slightly. Stopped. Waited. Not asking. But not assuming either. And in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't about him wanting something from me. It was about him choosing me. And waiting to see if I'd choose him too. So I did. I closed the distance. And for a second, everything else disappeared. The overthinking. The hesitation. The questions. Just us. Finally not pretending. When we pulled back, it was quiet. Not awkward. Not rushed. Just real. Leo let out a small breath. Okay, he said softly. I smiled slightly. Okay. And somehow, that felt like the beginning of something. Not just a moment. Not just a feeling. Something real. And this time, neither of us tried to pretend otherwise. After that night, everything changed. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just completely. We didn't talk about it right away. Which, honestly, surprised me. I thought Leo would be the type to push to ask, what are we now? Or try to define everything immediately. But he didn't. Instead, he just stayed. We were still standing close when it happened, that quiet moment after everything finally shifted. Leo ran a hand through his hair, letting out a slow breath. Well, he said. I let out a small laugh. That's all you've got. He smiled slightly. I'm trying not to say something stupid. That's new. Yeah, he nodded. You make me think more. That wasn't something I expected to hear. And the way he said it, it didn't feel like a joke. So what now? I asked again. This time, it felt different. More real. More necessary. Leo leaned back against the table, thinking. I don't want this to turn into something we only do when we're alone, he said. That hit immediately, because I knew exactly what he meant. And I knew why he was saying it. Me neither, I replied. He looked at me, like he was checking if I actually meant that. I'm serious, I added. I know, he said quietly. There was a pause. Then, I just don't know how to do this, he admitted. That. I understood. Yeah, I said. Same. For someone like Leo, someone who always seemed sure of himself, it was strange seeing him like this. Uncertain. Careful. Almost nervous. We don't have to figure everything out today, I said. He nodded. Yeah. Just don't disappear on me again. That caught me off guard. I didn't disappear. You did, he said. Yesterday. I looked down for a second. I needed time. I get that, he said. Just don't shut me out. That felt important. Okay, I said. I won't. We didn't study after that. There was no point pretending. Instead, we just stayed there. Talking. About random things at first. Classes. Friends. Dumb stuff. But even that felt different now. More open. At one point, Leo said, You know what's weird? What? You're quieter now than when we first started. I frowned. That doesn't sound right. It is, he said. But not in a bad way. How is that not bad? He smiled a little. Because now it feels like you're actually thinking before you speak. I rolled my eyes. I always think before I speak. No, he said. You used to just explain things. Now you choose what to say. That stuck with me. Because he wasn't wrong. Being around him now felt different. Not like I had to prove anything. Not like I had to fill space. Just present. Later that night, I was the one who hesitated before leaving. Standing by his door again. Same place. But not the same feeling. You're thinking again, he said. Yeah. Good or bad? Both. He nodded, like that made sense. I don't want this to get complicated, I said. It will, he replied immediately. I looked at him. You don't even hesitate. No, he said. Because it's already complicated. Fair. But that doesn't mean it has to be bad, he added. That part. I wanted to believe. Okay, I said. Okay, he repeated. Yeah. We just figure it out as we go. He smiled slightly. I can do that. There was that pause again. But this time, it didn't feel uncertain. It felt steady. Good night, Cooper, he said. Good night. I left. But this time, I didn't feel confused walking away. I felt something else. The next few days tested that feeling. Because being alone with Leo was one thing. Being around other people? That was different. It started small. Campus. Between classes. I saw him before he saw me. Standing with a group of people, laughing like usual. Confident. Relaxed. The version of him everyone knew. For a second, I hesitated. Because now there was a question I hadn't had to think about before. Do I go up to him? Or pretend nothing's changed? Then he looked over. And saw me. Everything paused. Just for a second. Then, Cooper. His voice cut through everything. Same as always. But not the same. He walked over without hesitation. Didn't stop halfway. Didn't act unsure. Just came straight to me. Where have you been? He asked. Class, I said. Obviously, he smirked. I meant yesterday. I told you I was busy. He gave me a look. I huffed. Okay, I wasn't that busy. That's what I thought. It felt normal. Easy. Like before. But underneath it, there was something else. You coming later? He asked. Yeah, I said. No hesitation this time. Good, he replied. And just like that, he went back to his group. But something stayed with me. He didn't ignore me. Didn't act distant. Didn't pretend. It wasn't a big gesture. But it mattered. Later that night, when I showed up at his place again, I realized something. This wasn't just about what happened between us anymore. It was about what we were choosing to do after. And Leo? He wasn't hiding. The question was I ready to do the same? Because this was getting real. Faster than I expected. And I had a feeling. The next step wouldn't be as easy. The next step came faster than I expected. And honestly, I wasn't ready for it. It happened 3 days later. Not during one of our late-night talks. Not in his apartment. But in the middle of campus. I was walking out of class, half focused on my phone, when I heard his voice again. Cooper. Not loud this time. Closer. I looked up. Leo was already there. Alone. You busy? He asked. Not right now, I said. Good. Walk with me. He didn't explain. Just started moving. And I followed. We ended up near the quieter part of campus. Fewer people. Less noise. That already told me this wasn't random. What's up? I asked. Leo stopped walking. Turned to face me. And for a second, he didn't say anything. That feeling came back again. That same tension. But this time, it wasn't uncertain. It was focused. I've been thinking, he said. That's usually dangerous, I replied. He didn't smile. Yeah, it is. Okay, so this wasn't casual. About what? I asked. He looked straight at me. About us. There it was. Finally, my chest tightened slightly. Okay, I meant what I said the other night, he continued. I don't want this to be something that only exists when we're alone. I nodded slowly. I know. But I also don't want to rush you, he added. That mattered. More than I expected. So what are you saying? I asked. He took a breath. I'm saying I don't want to act like nothing's happening when we're around other people. That was the moment. The one I knew was coming. The one I wasn't sure I was ready for. I looked away for a second. Thinking. Too much. Cooper, he said, quieter now. Talk to me. I am, I replied. Know you're thinking, he said. There's a difference. He wasn't wrong. I exhaled slowly. This is new for me. Me too. You don't act like it, I said. He gave a small, almost frustrated laugh. That's because I don't like overcomplicating things. And I do. I know, he said. Silence. Then, I'm not asking you to do anything big, he added. I just don't want to pretend. That word again. Pretend. I thought about the past few days. The way he acted when people were around. The way nothing about me felt hidden. The way he chose to walk over to me. You're not pretending, I said. I don't want you to feel like you have to, he replied. That hit deeper. Do you? He asked. Do I what? Feel like you have to hide it? I hesitated. That was my answer. Leo nodded slowly. Okay, he said. That was it. No pressure. No frustration. Just understanding. That doesn't mean I want to hide you, I said quickly. I know, he replied. I just need time to get used to this. That's fair. He stepped a little closer. Not too close. Just enough. I'm not going anywhere, he said. Simple. But solid. I looked at him. Really looked. And for the first time, I believed that. Okay, I said. Okay. Yeah, I nodded. We don't pretend. We just don't force anything either. He smiled slightly. I can work with that. That conversation stayed with me the rest of the day. Because it wasn't dramatic. But it mattered. And it changed how I saw everything after. Later that evening, I met him again. Same place. His apartment. You good? He asked as soon as I walked in. Yeah, I said. Just thinking. He smirked. Of course you are. But this time, it didn't feel like I was overthinking. It felt like I was adjusting. We didn't even open our notebooks. Just sat there, talking. At some point, I said, "You really don't hesitate, do you?" "With what?" "With us." He leaned back slightly, thinking. "I do," he said. I raised an eyebrow. "You don't act like it." "That's because I already decided something." "What?" He looked at me. "I don't want to miss this by overthinking it." That hit hard. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I get that." There was a pause. Then he added, "I think you feel it too. You're just slower with it." I let out a small laugh. "That's one way to put it." He stood up, walked closer, stopped in front of me. "Still with me?" he asked. I nodded. "Yeah." This time, there was no hesitation. No question hanging in the air. No uncertainty. Everything felt clearer. We weren't pretending anymore. Not about what this was. Not about how we felt. Just figuring out how to exist in it. And somehow, that felt bigger than anything that had happened before. Because this wasn't just about moments anymore. This was about something real. Something that would exist outside of quiet rooms and late nights. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of that. After that conversation, something settled between us. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough that I stopped feeling like I was constantly catching up to what was happening. Leo didn't change overnight. He was still the same around other people, confident, social, easy. But now, I started noticing something else. Not what he showed everyone. What he didn't hide anymore. It started with small things. Walking across campus together instead of splitting off. Sitting next to each other in class without overthinking it. Conversations that didn't feel like they had to be cut short the moment someone else walked by. Nothing obvious. Nothing that screamed this is different. But it was. And the more it happened, the more I realized something uncomfortable. Leo wasn't the one holding back anymore. I was. One afternoon, we were sitting outside after class. Not studying. Just there. "You're quieter again," he said. I glanced at him. "You notice everything, don't you?" "Only about you," he replied. That still did something to me. Every time. "I'm just thinking," I said. "About what?" I hesitated, then decided not to stop myself this time. "About how you make this look easy." He frowned slightly. "It's not easy." "It looks like it is." He shook his head. "I just don't fight it as much as you do." That was accurate. Too accurate. "I don't like not knowing what I'm doing," I admitted. "You don't have to know," he said. "You just have to not run." "I'm not running." "You did," he replied calmly. "At the beginning." I sighed. "Yeah, I did." He leaned back slightly, watching me. "I'm not asking you to change who you are," he said. "I just don't want you to hold back because you're scared of what this is." That word again. Scared. "I'm not scared," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "Okay," I corrected. "Maybe a little." He smiled slightly. "Good. That means it matters." I looked at him for a second. "You're really okay with not having this all figured out?" "Yeah," he said. "Why?" He didn't hesitate. "Because I know what I feel." That answer. It stayed. Because I didn't have that certainty yet. Not in the same way. But I was getting closer. "Cooper," he said after a moment. "Yeah. You don't have to catch up to me." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm not ahead of you. We're just moving differently." That helped. More than I expected. "I don't want you to feel like you have to be where I am," he added. "I don't," I said. He gave me a look. "Okay, maybe a little." He laughed softly. "I'm not going anywhere." There it was again. That same steady sentence. "I know," I said. And this time, I really meant it. That night, things felt lighter. Not because everything was solved. Because I stopped trying to solve it. We ended up back at his apartment. Again. At this point, it felt normal. "You realize we don't study anymore, right?" I said. "We tried," he replied. "Once. That counts." I shook my head, smiling. We sat on the couch this time. Not at the table. And that alone felt like a shift. Less structured. More real. "You're different here," he said. "How?" "More relaxed." "I think that's just because I've accepted you're not going to study." "Wow," he said. "Rude." I smiled slightly. There was a pause. A comfortable one. Then, "Come here," he said. That phrase didn't feel as heavy as it did before. Not because it meant less. Because it didn't feel uncertain anymore. I shifted closer. No hesitation this time. "See," he said quietly. "What?" "You're not overthinking that." I huffed a small laugh. "Don't point it out. You'll ruin it." He smiled, but didn't move away. Neither did I. We sat there, close. Not saying anything for a while. Just existing in it. And for the first time since this started, I didn't feel like I needed to analyze every second. This is nice, I said quietly. Yeah, he replied. Simple, but true. After a while, I leaned back slightly, looking at him. You know what's weird? What? This feels normal. He nodded. Yeah, it does. And that's when it clicked. This wasn't overwhelming anymore. It wasn't confusing. It wasn't something I was trying to figure out from the outside. I was in it, and it felt right. Not perfect, not defined, but real. Cooper, he said softly. Yeah, you're not pulling away anymore. I thought about that, then shook my head. No, I'm not. He smiled. Not big, just enough. Good, he said. And for the first time, I wasn't just reacting to what he felt. I was choosing it too. I didn't notice the exact moment it stopped feeling new. It just happened. One morning, I woke up and realized I wasn't overthinking anymore. Not about Leo. Not about what this was. Not about what it could become. It wasn't because everything was perfectly defined. It was because I finally felt steady. A few weeks had passed since that night on his couch. Since everything shifted from something confusing into something real. And in that time, nothing dramatic happened. No big declarations. No sudden changes. Just consistency. Leo was still Leo. Still loud with his friends. Still the center of attention in a room. Still the kind of person who made everything feel easy. But with me, he was different. Quieter. More focused. More intentional. And I realized something one afternoon while we were walking across campus. I wasn't trying to figure him out anymore. We were walking side by side, not talking about anything important. Just random stuff. Classes. Weekend plans. Nothing that mattered. But then he said casually, "You're smiling more lately." I frowned. I always smile. No, he said. Not like this. I looked at him. What does that mean? He shrugged slightly. It means you're not in your head all the time. That hit. Because he was right. I think that's your fault, I said. I'll take that, he replied. We kept walking. Easy. Normal. And that word stayed with me again. Normal. Because that's what this had become. Not something secret. Not something confusing. Not something fragile. Just part of my life. Later that day, we met at his apartment again. At this point, it felt more familiar than my own. You still helping me study? He asked, smirking. No, I said immediately. You don't need help anymore. Wow, he replied. So this whole thing was just about my grades? I gave him a look. You know it wasn't. Yeah, he said, quieter now. I do. There was a pause. Then, good, he added. We sat down, but didn't even pretend to open our notebooks. You ever think about how this started? I asked. All the time, he said. Really? Yeah. Why? He looked at me. Because I almost didn't ask you for help. That surprised me. You? Not asking for something you want. He smiled slightly. I didn't know if you'd say yes. I always say yes. Not to things like this. That was true. I didn't know what this would turn into, he continued. Me neither. He leaned back slightly, watching me. But I'm glad I asked. That sentence. It felt simple. But it wasn't. Yeah, I said quietly. Me too. There was a pause. Not heavy. Not uncertain. Just calm. Then he said, You know this isn't just about studying anymore, right? I smiled slightly. I think we figured that out a while ago. He nodded. Yeah, just making sure we're on the same page. We are, I said. And for once, there was no hesitation in my voice. Because I knew. Not everything. Not the future. Not where this would go in 5 years. But I knew this. I wasn't just helping him anymore. And he wasn't just asking. We chose this. Together. And that made all the difference. That night, when I stood by his door again. Same place where everything had started. It didn't feel like a turning point anymore. It just felt like another moment. You heading out? He asked. Yeah. But neither of us moved right away. Not because we didn't know what to do. Because we didn't feel rushed anymore. I'll see you tomorrow, he said. Yeah, I replied. I paused, then added, Not for studying. He smiled. Good. And as I stepped out into the hallway one last time, I realized something. This didn't feel like the beginning anymore. It felt like something we were already living. And for once, I wasn't questioning it. I was just in it. And that was enough.